Good hello once again, and welcome to another episode of what I have inexplicably called Talky Time, because I'm a very serious person. So, firstly, you might hear various creatures in the background, because there are apparently a gigantic flock of birds that is making a lot of noise outside. So if you hear that during this recording, I apologize. Or don't, because, you know what, birds sound cute, and they're lovely creatures, so you should just let them make their noises, okay? Anyway, so today, let's first, I suppose, say what this actually is. So for those who don't know what this is a series of kind of shortish, by my standards, informal, unstructured, sort of unscripted discussions about something. In this particular case, we are looking at deontological ethics, which sounds all big and fancy, but really isn't. It's pretty much just rights-based ethics. This is the next episode, I suppose, in a series that is about animal welfare, animal liberation, what have you. In the previous episode, which is about utilitarianism, I specifically said that that utilitarianism is not animal rights. It's the wrong term to use. And now we're actually looking at animal rights. So now we're actually looking at this particular one. So this, if you don't really necessarily care for the animal aspect of the rights, doesn't really matter. If you just want to learn about the rights in general, this will also explain the overarching theory in general. So you'll be learning about deontological ethics, rights-based ethics. So, we'll be basically talking about three people, mostly two, because the third one is more just an elaboration. So, Immanuel Kant, who was very much like what his name sounds like, Tom Regan, and Korsgaard. Korsgaard is the one we won't talk about that much, because her work is more an elaboration on what Regan was trying to do, but I would actually say in many ways Korsgaard surpassed him to quite an extent, but it's fine. She was arguing in a different capacity, so it's really fine. But we have to start with good old Immanuel Kant. Kant, or however you want to say it. It's German, so it's probably more like Kant, not Kant, which is how a lot of British and American people will say it, but that's what they do. So, this dude bro was probably one of the most influential philosophers of all time. German idealism, that whole thing. And he was, quite a closed-off man, stayed in his little world, but he created this idea. Probably the most famous thing that he did was this whole idea in general of this rights-based thing. So this was about the time when people were starting to move towards liberalism and away from the idea of, a more Christian ideology and what have you. So we need to have a form of ethics that is grounded and rule-based and understandable and blah, 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 blah. So he's like, all right, cool. We're going to look at this. Now, I'm not going to look at his work in specific. I'm going to be more so looking at ideas that he discussed, important ideas, general ideas. So first we're going to look at ends and means. All right, so there are these two general ideas. There's a means to an end, and there's ends in themselves. All right. Now, this is about ethics, right? It's about morality. It's about what is the right thing to do. Now, the first thing that you have to ask here is, okay, it involves people, right? Ethics involves people. People make ethical decisions, all right? Which means that we need to decide who are the people that ethics applies to and who are the people that it doesn't apply to. Now, he would say, I believe, I haven't looked too deeply into it, but I believe he was also, like many of his time, a racist, so he probably didn't believe that certain people were equal to others, but we're going to ignore that and rather just say, do his philosophy better than he did his philosophy, which is also basically what Korsgaard did, was just like, her whole thing was that Kant was wrong about what he was right about. It's quite a great book, that particular book, but only read it if you care like about specifically, like Kantian philosophy. So doesn't really matter. But anyway, so means and ends. All right. A means to an end is a thing that you use to get something, right? So a means is the thing you want, and then the end is what you actually want. So you could say, a brick is a means to an end. If I have enough bricks, I can build a house, right? That means that they are mere things. They are just things. They don't have moral worth. I can throw a brick, and it doesn't matter, because it's not alive. It's not a living thing. It's not a person. Which is where Kant then would say, do you know what else is a means to an end? Animals. This is a long-standing tradition. It goes back to, sort of people like Plato, and then St. Thomas Aquinas, and probably most importantly, René Descartes, who, now he's most famous, for those who don't know who he is, he's the person who's most famous for saying, I think, therefore I am. But he was also a massively horrible person. I was going to swear, and then I realized that I decided I'm not going to swear in these particular Talky Time videos. So he was a massive, not nice word. He believed in vivisection, which is cutting things open when they're still alive, and then, to look at the insides. And he had this whole thing where he was like, no, you silly, silly man. You think when it's writhing and screaming that that's pain? No. Animals do not experience pain. You just think that they experience pain because that's what pain looks like, and it definitely is pain. But I'm going to say it isn't. But anyway, his view is stupid and wrong. It's a mechanistic viewpoint. You believe that animals were biological machines, that you could do whatever you wanted to, and it doesn't actually matter. And when they're screaming or making noise or whatever, it's actually just, the biological gears malfunctioning, which the problem is you could say, yes, that's correct. It is, but you could say the same of humans. When you get stabbed, it's because your biological gears have been stabbed. So he was wrong, but it's fine. It's not fine, but, So it kind of comes from this idea, right? Animals are just means to an end. You can just use an animal to get what you want. So, do you want food? Cool, kill it. Cut it up. Do you want leather? Cool, kill it, skin it. It's fine. Do you want to do experiments to learn more about something? Cool, it doesn't matter. Do awful things to animals. They don't actually matter. What matters is that we get the end we want because we are ends in ourselves. Now, his whole thing was saying, listen, ends in themselves should not be treated as means. Do not treat people as means. People are not means to your ends. Everyone has to be treated basically respectfully and equally. Everybody has to be viewed the same way. All right? And this is where you get into this idea of the imperatives. Now, there are two overarching imperatives that there are, one of which he said was good and one of which he said was bad. The hypothetical imperative, that's the one he said was not so great. But let's first discuss the hypothetical imperative because it's not the big famous one. Now go onto Wikipedia, and if you look up these two imperatives, one of them has a huge, long Wikipedia page. The other one has like a few paragraphs. It's not really a lot. So the hypothetical imperative is basically utilitarianism, saying, if I do a thing, what are the hypothetical consequences of that thing? Which he said that's a bad thing to do. The consequences don't matter, which is what utilitarianism is, right? I can't do this thing because I'm going to hurt someone. And he says, no. No. That is wrong. You do not look at the consequences. You do not think, if I kill this person, I'm going to go to jail. You don't think that. You go, no. We need to rather focus on the categorical imperative. So this is not about consequences. These are rules. These are things that I have decided. These are categories that are imperative that you have to follow. All right, so here's where it goes. Anything that you could do, a moral action, right? You have to then decide, can that moral action be generalized and universalized to a larger extent? So I'm going to say something like this. Murder. Now you might say, cool, murder is wrong. Now let's analyze this from a categorical imperative perspective. All right, I'm now thinking here, I really want to kill this person. But now I have to think to myself, okay, if I kill that person, I might be happy because I'm a serial killer, something. If I wanted to kill that person, I'll say, all right, but what if everybody did that thing? Can I universalize it? Can I say murder is justifiable? And then I go, all right, murder is justifiable. And then I go, if I said that everyone could murder, then there'd be chaos. Everyone would be killing everyone. So I cannot say that. If I could say something like this, is it ethical to steal? If everybody stole, then there'd be, it would be like Earth before God murdered everyone with a flood. There's a little bit of biblical trivia for all of you there who don't know about the flood. So you could say, no, I can't steal because I cannot generalize this to everyone. I cannot say, oh no, everyone can steal, because then everything falls apart. I can't say everyone can murder. I can't say, so literally look at all the things that are like moral actions and say, is it justifiable to cheat on my spouse? Well, does that mean that my spouse can cheat on me? And if you think, I don't want my spouse to cheat on me, then it's wrong for you to cheat on your spouse. That's basically what he's saying. Can I take an action and then generalize it and say, if everybody did this, would it be fine? So then if I say, is it justifiable to give food to people? Like to give food to homeless people? And you say, all right, if everybody were to give food to homeless people would have more food, and that's a good thing. Okay, cool. Yes, that's fine. That is morally correct. That is good. That is charity. That is great. That is a good categorical moral imperative. That is great. However, a little issue here is just this idea that you say, okay, cool, fine. But how specific am I allowed to be? Because if I just said, murder is wrong, yes, most people say, yes, it is. But then you have to put some caveats in there, because what if you are, for instance, defending yourself? In which case you then go, most people go, okay, a murder in self-defense is justifiable. But then you have to define what is self-defense. If somebody is specifically coming at you, that is self-defense. But let's say somebody broke into your house, killed your child, and was now going for your spouse. You now sit there and you're like, they've already killed my child. Now they're not coming for me. If I kill them before they kill my spouse, then it's fine. But if everybody, like that would be considered like revenge, isn't it? You're killing someone because they killed your child. If everybody took revenge, then that wouldn't, so now all of a sudden it becomes more complicated. But you can, if you just specialize what you're saying, then you can make anything work. Is it morally correct to steal? No. Is it morally correct to steal bread? Now let's just say we're going to say, well, no. Is it morally correct to steal bread when you're hungry? Now you might say, no, well, it doesn't matter. No, it's still not morally correct. Now if I modify it again and say, is it morally correct to steal bread to feed your starving children? Most people would be like, most non-conservatives would be like, yes, that's morally fine. Yes. So if I just make it more and more specific, I can kind of justify anything, really. Is it morally justifiable to do whatever in these very specific circumstances? But it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny in that sense. These are more broad, generalizable rules. So that's the idea. That's why it's the rights-based approach. These are rules. So we come up with all these rules, like you cannot murder people in cold blood. That would be like the thing where it's like no premeditated murder. There we go. There's a little bit of a caveat there. Right, no premeditated murder, which means you planned it out and you wanted to kill a person, which is not the same as killing someone in self-defense or manslaughter. Like this doesn't take into account things like manslaughter. If, say for instance, I'm driving my car and someone runs in front of the car and I do my best to stop in time but I hit them and they die, that's manslaughter. Now, my moral action, like that's I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't try and kill someone, but someone died. So, am I still morally in the wrong? A lot of people will still feel terrible if they were to, for instance, kill someone like that by mistake. Not their fault, but they'll still feel bad. But were they morally in the right or in the wrong? Kant might have some difficulties there, because Kant, for instance, famously had this extremely stupid example, the mad axe murderer. If a mad axe murderer is chasing your friend, and your friend runs to your house and goes, "Please help me," and you go, "Of course, get inside," and the mad axe murderer comes, knocks on the door, and you open, and you go, "Yes, Mr. Mad Axe Murderer," and he says, "I'm looking for Bobby," and he has the axe, and he's like, "I want to kill him." Now, you or I might think this, right, because this is completely, perfectly rational. You would go, "He isn't here." Correct? That's what you would say. You would be like, "He isn't here." And then he would leave. Kant says, no. You tell the truth. Because what happened? What if you say, "He isn't here," and he turns around, and then in that time, your friend tried to escape out a window, and now the mad axe murderer sees him, and you ended up inexplicably doing this. Now, all of these are like stupid thought experiments that don't exist. It's like the trolley problem, which we discussed in utilitarianism. These things don't exist. They don't happen in real life. So it's actually a pointless hypothetical scenario, which doesn't matter. It doesn't take into account things like context. And also, for instance, if a mad axe murderer knocked on my door and was like, "I want your friend who just hid in here," would you not be more morally justifiable in maybe trying to attack the person? Now that they're not chasing you, they're being polite with you. Couldn't you just kick them? Punch them in the face and steal the axe from them, and then try and apprehend them? Wouldn't that be more? But no, that would be violence. Which violence? If everybody did violence, it wouldn't be. So it doesn't work. These are stupid thought experiments, but it's whatever. So these are the imperatives. Now, we've talked about means, ends, imperatives. Now, these imperatives obviously are only for ends in themselves. God. These imperatives are only for ends in themselves. We do not have any kind of a moral obligation towards a rock. You can kick it. You can fart on it. You can urinate on it. It's not alive. It doesn't matter. It has no moral worth in this particular viewpoint. There will be people who disagree with that particular view, but, let's just say, from this perspective. And so that's where you get into this idea of duty, which is the big thing in it, right? You have a duty to your fellow man. You have a duty. You have a direct duty to them. Now, he also spoke about what are called indirect duties. These would be to things that are not, alive, which he added animals in that. Indirect duties like, I don't know, looking after things, like your house. You have an indirect duty to look after your house, but you have a direct duty to help others, to try to protect others, to be kind to others, right? But he did not apply these direct duties to non-human animals. He was like, no, they don't count, because that's why. That is why. They didn't really have reasons. They just didn't want to include certain groups. It would be the same reason why a lot of these people, these old philosophers and stuff, would be like, you need to have all of these particular, these are good things to be. This is to be an ethical, moral person. Should be like this, blah, blah, blah. And you go, but don't you own slaves? They are not people. They are subhuman. So they don't count. Okay? So I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not a hypocrite because certain races are inferior to others. So I'm not a hypocrite, okay? That's what you get from a lot of these kind of philosophers who are racist, sexist, whatever. They'll all have this thing. I recently was reading Nietzsche, and his whole thing is oh, you have to have this will to power and pushing forward to become the best you can become. But woman can't. Woman can't. And you're just but why? You're intentionally weakening your own theory by being a sexist. It's the same thing here, being it applies to all people except black people. It's a ridiculous thing. And essentially, this dude, Tom Regan, was the one who went, no, but this whole perspective, right, is ridiculous, isn't it? Being oh, no, the non-human animals are somehow special and not worthy of moral worth. Why are they means to an end? Why are they not ends in themselves? And this is where he spoke about this concept called a moral patient versus a moral agent. A moral agent is someone who can do morality, right? So humans, I can decide to kick a toddler, right? I can decide to do something good or bad. I have agency. I can choose to do it. Non-human animals, a lot of them, cannot. Animals are not good or bad. They do not have morality. That is why they will kill something and they will not see it as a bad thing in any sense. They won't feel regret because they don't have the capacity to feel regret. They don't have that. So this is why a lot of these kind of philosophers like Kant would say, oh no, animals don't count because animals don't do, morality. So you could do whatever the hell you want to them. But also, importantly, you would often see a lot of these people like St. Thomas Aquinas said this. He said, no, you can use animals for whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. They don't matter. You can use animals. But, if you are cruel to animals, that isn't a good thing because you might end up being cruel to humans later down the line, which is something that people like Kant would somewhat agree with. You shouldn't be cruel to animals. You shouldn't kick a dog because that could eventually lead you to becoming immoral towards humans. So it doesn't actually matter what happens to the animals. It matters that it ends up eventually affecting humans, which is awful. So this is where this idea of moral agents and moral patients, right? A moral agent is somebody who can do morality. We do morality to other moral agents. You do good or bad things to other humans who can then respond with good or bad things, right? But a moral patient is something else. Animals cannot do morality, but they can receive morality. A dog cannot choose to be cruel, but we can choose to be cruel to them. A dog cannot choose to, bite a baby for fun, but we can choose to kick a dog. So he points out this. He goes, it doesn't matter. This is Regan now, this isn't Kant. He says, it doesn't matter that animals are not moral agents. No, animals cannot choose to do moral things. No, they can't be moral or immoral. They can't be either. They are non-moral. However, they can receive morality. For instance, when we have factory farms, the things we do to them, those things hurt them, which is a moral action we are taking against them. We are hurting them on purpose, which is bad. When we experiment on them, we are doing that on purpose. We are being bad, essentially. And now Regan spends a lot of his time discussing why animals should be considered to be moral patients. They have consciousness. They have bodily autonomy. They have their own interests. Dog, no one to be kicked. Dog would prefer food. If something has interests, if it can choose to do things, it is a moral patient. That's why you could also, he didn't do this, but you could extend immorality basically to plants. If you keep a plant intentionally out of the sun and slowly kill it, you're still doing something moral to it. You are hurting the plant. Maybe plants, we don't see them as being the same, but why not? Why is it fine to do that to them? It shouldn't be fine to do that to them. But it's much easier to think of animals. All you have to do is this. If you've ever been around a dog and they decide they're lying down outside, they're chilling, and the shadows slowly move and cover them. And what do? They get up and they walk back into the sun and lie down. Why would they do that if they didn't have interests, if they didn't want to be warm? They were choosing to be warmer because that's their decision to make. They have interests. That's what they want to do, right? They also have psychological and social needs. They need to be with others. A lot of animals, most, are social creatures. We are social creatures. We are social animals. We need other humans around. And also a lot of the time, not even necessarily humans, that's the thing. You would see this before, where you can survive, you and a dog. You don't get that many people who are no, I want to live completely alone. It'll be I have a dog or a cat, and they keep me company. It provides you with a social need. They're the same. If you've ever seen a dog that has been neglected, they freak out. They're awful. See, just see a thing where you go to work and you come back and the dog is so excited, which we're so happy about. We're like, oh, the dog's so excited to see me. The dog's so excited to see you because it's been like locked in a cage. And you might say, oh no, it's not a cage. It was in the garden. It is a cage. It's just a big cage. They've been locked in a cage alone. And you get home and so they're really excited to see you because they're like, oh my God, I actually get some attention. Which we all do want. And like psychological needs. No one wants to be like caged, stuff like this. The creatures that we put into experimentation or factory farming, we are doing awful things to them and psychologically damaging them. But of course they never, they don't grow to have any psychological issues because we kill them before that can happen. But once again, look at animals, right? Animals have psychology that we can actually see. Perfect example is the cat that lives with us, Gimli. He's a cutie. He used to be extremely social. Extremely social. He was social. He was like excited. He would go everywhere. He would always chill with us. He'd be like, oh yeah, I'm just hanging out. And then a dog got in. And the dog got to him. The other cats got up a tree. They were still young. Gimli tried to hide in bushes, and he was caught. He was grabbed by a dog, and he was shaken. Which you've seen that thing that dogs do when they shake something. It's to kill it. That's what they're trying to do. He suffered internal bleeding, and his like flesh disconnected from something. It's like his skin disconnected inside. So he had to go to a vet. He was fine. He's fine now. He's never been the same since. He is skittish. He is scared all the time. He gets frights all the time. If you wake him up when he was sleeping, he wakes up with like a which he didn't used to do. He used to just be like, oh, you're scratching me. Now he gets a fright. He's scared. That is psychological damage. That's trauma that did that. But we want to act as if, no, animals can't experience trauma. Be around a dog that was abused, and you will know that animals can suffer trauma and it will have long-term consequences. We kind of only are like the dogs that we got from shelters. They're rescue dogs. I don't really agree with pet ownership, as would be in the video What We Do to Animals. I don't agree with pet ownership, but I do have a dog, but I've had her since I was a teenager. The other ones I didn't actually really necessarily choose. One came into our lap, and now we recently got a new dog because the puppy didn't have anyone to play with because my puppy is very, very old. She's a very old girl. But the two, the oldest one and now the newest one, they're both from shelters and they're both quite skittish creatures. Now, Kayla, is the old one, she's 13, she's blind, she's mostly deaf, and she has always been very, very skittish, but she was rescued from, she was an animal rescue. I don't know what happened to her we got her when she was 3 months old. I don't know what happened to her in her first 3 months. Did she suffer like awful things? Did things happen to her that I don't know about? And that's why she's the way she is. This new dog also, very skittish. She does that thing where she like bows her legs out. She's super excited, but she's also like worried you're going to hit her. Which, we would never do, and we never have. Okay, she's only been with us for like a week, but still, we would never do anything like that. But she doesn't know that. If she was abused, she doesn't know that. There's a dog I know that was like mercilessly abused and is now like, you can't touch her. Only one person is allowed to touch her. If anyone goes near her, she runs away. So the idea that that they don't have like their own consciousness, they don't have psychological needs, nonsense. And that's basically what Regan's being like, no, listen, they have thoughts. They have a consciousness. They can be harmed. We can hurt them. Which means they are moral patients. They might not be moral agents, but that doesn't matter. We should treat them with morality. We should treat them with a rights-based approach, and that's why essentially it would say, listen, we should have rights for animals. Like we have for people. Cannot kill. Cool, you can't just kill people. You can't just kill animals. You can't torture them. You can't do whatever. You can't lock them up. And now, as just a brief quick aside, Christine Korsgaard, she basically just went even more in depth into like attacking Kant and being like, listen, you're wrong about all these things. You're wrong for excluding animals. You're wrong. Ultimately coming down still on the side of rights-based, of this deontological approach, but pretty much saying, listen, my man, you were right about the rights-based approach, but you were wrong about how to apply it. You failed in what you were trying to do. You were trying to create an ethical theory and then intentionally left certain groups out. We're not going to do that now. We're not going to leave certain groups out. So no. So that's Christine Korsgaard as well. So I only want to do a brief aside. If you are interested in this stuff, I don't think you really need to read Tom Regan. But if you're someone familiar with Kant and you want to know about this, Christine Korsgaard's Fellow Creatures is a fantastic book. Absolutely fantastic book. I think it might be the book I took the most notes on. That wasn't one of the ridiculously long books, because you can't expect, it's like a 400-page book, I think. So you can't expect to take as many notes of a 400-page book as a 1,000-page book. But, I think it might be the one I wrote the most notes on that was of a consistent length. But yes. Now, Tom Regan and Peter Singer, who we spoke about in the previous one, the one about utilitarianism, they are both kind of seen in many ways by some people as like the fathers of the sort of animal liberation movement, going from different perspectives, but to achieve the same goals. They both agree on the same thing. But people tend to more so focus on Peter Singer, and also, as many ecofeminists would point out, there have actually been many people, many women, who have essentially said the same things and did not receive the same attention, maybe because, sexism. So that is something to keep in mind, and that's actually why, like, Peter Singer and Tom Regan are considered, like, foundational in animal studies. However, as soon as you dig just a little bit deeper, you start going, oh, there's a lot more than just these two people. So, that isn't great. That's not funky or fresh, as they say. I don't remember where the funky or fresh thing came from. I think it's my fiancé, but I don't remember the context. Anyway, let's move on. So that will be it for today, for this particular episode, if you can call them episodes. I hope that you have a fantastic day further. I hope that you have a good everything. And I probably should also say the other thing. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more, like, comment, subscribe, the usual things. Check out my description for other things I do, because I do many things. Not too many things, but many enough. And yeah, I think that will be it. So, goodbye. I hope that you have a great day, week, month ahead. Ta-ta.